ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste to all, and thank you for inviting me to talk on this sacred day on the topic of emotional psychological maturity. Now, the growth as a human being is twofold. One type of growth does not take any effort at all. One is born, one survives the birth, one grows up, lots of changes take place, and then little later lots of other kinds of changes also take place in the sense of a downward trend, decay. In Sanskrit it is called apakshaya. Decay of all kinds take place, and then the body gets weaker and the body dies away. This is what is called the physical growth, comprising 6 stages. For this, nothing has to be done. In fact, we have to run against some of these things. Like when the body starts to decay, suddenly one has to take up some yoga and maintain the body. Even if one has not done yoga all their life, that this is the time to do it. And then when the mind gets a little weak, then suddenly all kinds of Ayurvedic preparations are taken, and then they are used to keep the mind from degenerating. So like this, the physical growth, for that one doesn't have to do anything. It is automatic and completely effortless on part of this human being. Totally effortless. Now, what is if this physical growth is enough, then we will not be talking about any other kind of growth that is necessary for humankind. We would be more or less like animals, growing, reproducing, and then dying away. For the animals, this is enough. So, being born, growing, and dying away, they, naturally, not being killed, but dying away naturally is like the best outcome, and it is enough for all the animals. They don't aspire other things. No cow wants to go to America if it's an Indian cow. It doesn't say, okay, I'm going to America now, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to get a degree, I'm going to go to a university. All these things it will not say. It will absolutely not say. And then it is happy wherever it is. It has a few desires. What kind of desires will it have? It will have some desires like maybe the grass is greener on this side of the pasture, Things like that it will have. It will not have any other desires. But for the human being, it is slightly different. The physical growth, to complete the cycle of physical growth, is just not enough. There is something else that the human being finds lacking and wants to initiate. And this is a different kind of growth. And this growth is something that does not happen automatically. It is self-initiated in the sense that one has to make an effort to this. And what is this growth, if you ask? In one sentence, it would be growing from being a consumer to a contributor. All our lives as children, we just consume. Children can't do anything else. Babies consume. They have to be taken care of 24/7 for many years. And then, okay, childhood is done, and then they are little more independent, but still consume, 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 consume. And if one dies away, just consuming, one is not happy, because it is God given. It is already there in the nature of the human person to contribute. To contribute something that one can do, that one can offer, that one can share with the rest of the world. That's the most natural thing for one to do. Now, this growth from being a consumer to a contributor is done slowly over the period of, sometimes we can even say, many lifetimes, before one understands what is it that is missing in my everyday life, so that I can start correcting that. So it sometimes can take many incarnations. If one believes in that, even if one doesn't believe in that, one whole life it can take, it doesn't really matter. And then, so this whole initiation from being a consumer of people's contributions to being a contributor by oneself is a very important endeavor. And this growth, if we do not initiate, there is frustration, there is pain, there is sorrow, and there is also one more thing, a kind of a smallness. Because if we are stuck in the phase of being consumers, we are always asking for handouts, asking to be taken care of, asking for help, asking, we become very needy. We think we are unable to take care of ourselves. We are just barely there. Somehow, the day goes on and the month goes on, the years go by, and somehow there is just this kind of a base level functioning out of which one is not able to launch. In American parlance, this is called a failure to launch. And so therefore, this is something which is very sad, because when you look at a person who is always unsure of themselves, always lacking in self-confidence, always wanting this, that, or the other, and always looking for somebody to fulfill their needs, they cannot be happy. Even on the relative level, one cannot be happy, one cannot be cheerful, because even in the body language of someone who is asking all the time, there is a deep sense of shame. You look here, you look there, and the whole shoulders scrunch forward, and then there is just this asking, can you please give me this? I need this, I need that. But then you look at the body language of someone ready to give, there is great joy. The chest is up. Yes, please take. I'm so glad you asked. There is this feeling of buoyancy, there is resilience. And so, therefore, this growth is important to complete in this life, because it portends a greater growth that is there from being a miserable person stuck in the everyday to understanding that one is free of sorrow. But that growth can only happen through knowledge, through self knowledge, and but then this growth has to happen on by oneself, and then only one is ready for that growth. The relative growth is important before one looks for the absolute understanding of oneself as free of sorrow totally. One has to gather a certain kind of a relative cheerfulness, and that relative cheerfulness comes from initiating this growth. How is this growth accomplished? That's the next thing we are going to discuss, because this is a very important topic. Because from the physical growth, we have to go now to the emotional growth, to my psychological maturity. How do I do that? And that is talked about Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna, when he says, look, you are talking like a grown up, but you're acting like a baby. You're acting like a baby. You're talking like a pandit, but you're acting like a baby. And you are mired in sorrow. You're mired in pain. That's because to be objective, you are mired in a certain kind of a subject. What is a hurdle in the way of emotional growth is one's own subjectivity. And what is this subjectivity? Subjectivity is the refusal to see that there is already a flow there, that I am part of this flow. This flow was there already when I was born. I was born related to people. I was born related to a particular place, to a community, to a nation. There is a logic to all this. And I have certain duty. This is all these are all certain things which we understand. And I did not make these scheme of things. I did not choose my background. I did not choose my parentage. I did not choose the people I grew up with, siblings. It's all already there. It was already there. It was a choiceless affair, and I was put into this show. It's almost like play. I was put into the part. I have to understand what is the script. I have to go along with it, and I have to discover it. And that is why this whole teaching about growing up emotionally is a very, very important teaching, because that is the key to happiness. That is the key to happiness. That is the key to self-love. That is the key for most about everything. And so, when Arjuna says that actually there is a split in you, Arjuna is told by Lord Krishna, there is a split. Kaunteya, Partha, you're talking like a mother's child. still holding on to the dress of the mother. And this split is not just there in Arjuna, but is there in every single person in the entire universe. And this is the split that needs to be healed. The split between the inner child and the adult, the split between emotions that refuse to grow up and the grown up person who is reasonable, who has a lot of ambitions, who wants to do this, do that, who wants to help society, who wants to study yoga, who wants to understand many things. But then what is that person doing? That person who wants to do this is constantly hijacked. By what? By one's own problems. One is constantly hijacked by one's own problems and by the subjectivity I spoke of earlier, and by these childish emotions that have not grown up. From where did these childish emotions come? One may ask that. And it's a very, very relevant question. The childish emotions, of course, belong to me as a child, belong to oneself as a child. But what happened is that they were truncated and they could not be transformed. They got kind of warped in time and stuck in time. And this is a trauma response. Anybody who has undergone trauma, which is everybody really, only the question is how deep is it and how resourceful is the person to come out of it. That's the only question. Everybody has had some amount of trauma in the life, so everybody has some version of the inner child. The child cannot deal with the pain. The child does not understand how to deal with the pain, and so that processing is interrupted by nature itself, so that the child can grow. Without having any issues, the child can grow up. And then when the brain development is complete, that is the time that the child, this adult can look at all the childhood issues and overcome them. This is how the setup is. But what happens is, most frequently, what happens is that this is not understood. That there are two people in every person is not understood. One is the person who is ready to contribute, who is ready to discover in herself or himself as a contributor, and the other one is still crying over the balloon which was pricked by the sibling. I want the balloon, I never had a balloon. And if you give this person 50 balloons for their 50th birthday, still they will want that balloon from that time which was snatched away or which was popped by the sister or the brother. This is what is called a frozen need. And this frozen need becomes part of the unconscious mind because the child is not equipped to deal with such strong emotions of neglect, abuse, abandonment, whatever that may be there. The child is not equipped. The child doesn't have this. So then it is covered over, and that is what is called the unconscious. And then one gets to know that one has an unconscious aspect to the mind after one grows up. The unconscious introduces itself to you unceremoniously at a time when you are least prepared or least wanting this introduction. It just introduces itself to you without anything at all. And then what does it, how does it come out? It doesn't say, hello, happy to meet you. I am part of your unconscious mind. No, then at least I could take care of it if that's what it did. It will come out as a burst of anger, and from where this anger has come out, the person doesn't know. The person themselves they are surprised. When the person himself or herself is surprised, how did this happen? Where did this come from? And the person might be able to say, I am so sorry, I don't know where this outburst came from. This is not like me. And same with tears, same with fears. I know a person who was very, very, what's the word for it, strong and courageous. But suddenly, after a certain age, he developed all kinds of fears. You name it, he got it. It's just some kind of an anxiety came up, and all the things that he could do very well before, unaided, unassisted, now he was afraid to do without some help, without somebody there. And so we can't say it suddenly came, it was already there latent. It chose that particular person's life to become, to make this person aware. Hello, I am here too. I am also here. And this is very beautifully illustrated in our Upanishads also. That until this growth takes place, the knowledge of the self as already free, already whole, already one with everything, is constantly escaping one. But then, when one is ready for this knowledge, then only it comes. And why is this knowledge escaping one? It is escaping one because of two reasons. The unconscious mind is not interrogated, not healed, not looked into. Reason number one. And reason number two, the unconscious mind is therefore running the show. The person is not making the decision. Anger is making the decision. Fear is making the decision. Anxiety is making the decision. Sorrow is making the decision. All the wants and don't wants, strong prejudices and strong preferences, dvesha and raga, they are making the decisions. The person is nowhere to be found. That is why this emotional maturity is very, very needed. But how did this unconscious mind come into being? It comes into being because of a fall from what we call Shraddha. What is Shraddha? Reverence. And Shraddha is also trust. In the beginning, the child cannot do anything but trust. Of course, how can it not trust? It has to trust, because it is totally helpless to look after itself, and therefore it has to trust. And so the complete helplessness is compensated by total trust. Total trust. And this total trust alone is going to make the child grow up and trust whoever is taking care of it. And this total trust is there towards the primary caregivers, a mother, father, or foster mother, foster father, whoever it might be, whoever is taking care of the child, the total trust is directed towards them. But then the parents are also what? Not infallible. They are not infallible at all. And so therefore what? They may make a mistake. They don't mean to yell at the child. Suddenly they yell at the child. They don't want to treat the child badly, but suddenly they treat the child badly because of their own frustration, their own limitedness, and their own inner child, which they have not interrogated. That also is there. And so as a result, then the child suddenly loses the trust. This trust is lost. And in the loss of this trust and the covering over, putting a lid on the pain and the sorrow because it doesn't know how to do this, the child grows how to deal with this pain. So the child grows up completely distrustful, and by the time the child is an adult, the child does not trust the adult does not trust anyone. So we all go about life looking everywhere. Who are you? What do you want? Why are you in my life? And I know you are going to ask for something. Even before you ask, let me tell you, you're not going to get this. So like this, the person becomes a very jaded and totally, what is the word for it? Totally a shell of themselves because of this distrust. And this distrust constitutes a very big hurdle for emotional maturity, emotional healing. So emotional maturity means to integrate this child that is standing somewhere separate in the psyche and then running the show, to integrate that slowly into the adult. This is what has to take place. And then only the two become one. And this one person can then, without any glitches, follow the heart wherever it needs to go, finish all the ambitions in life, and also settle down for a period of study, self-study, studying with a teacher, all this so that one knows the truth of oneself. Introspection, study, meditation, all these things become very, very, very important. And so this emotional maturity has to be done in 2 or 3 ways. We are going to just discuss a few upayas, remedial measures to help one along, to help this inner child integrate into the adult. Of course, like with everything else, first one has to come out of denial. Many people will say, I don't have an inner child. What's wrong? You may have it. You had a messed up upbringing. I didn't have anything like that. My parents were the most loving. Nothing happened to me. I am perfectly fine. And then you can ask them, do you get angry? No, I never get angry. If they say that, you can do to them what my teacher did to one such person. One person came to my teacher and said, Swamiji, what? I have completely overcome my anger. And then Swamiji said very calmly, I think you are telling a lie. No, Swamiji, I'm not telling a lie. I have overcome my anger fully. I think you are lying. No, Swamiji, I'm not lying. And this continued for a while. And then the person got very, very angry. After the third time, Swamiji said, I don't think you're telling the truth. He got very, very angry. And so this way, the coming out of denial is a very important first step. In everything it is important. In here it is very much important, because in denying the existence of the inner child, you know what I'm doing? I'm denying myself. I'm denying an important part of myself that can give me insights about my emotional life, about my psyche, about the infrastructure in which I grew up. It can give me insights on how to overcome this. But yet, if I spend the whole life denying the child and pretending it doesn't exist, locking it up in some dark corner of the mind, then we are not getting very far at all. And so, therefore, what we need to do is first acknowledge that this inner child exists. This is point number one. Point number two is to also, while we are on the topic of acknowledging and acknowledgement, we have to also acknowledge that this inner child to integration needs some help, either in the form of a book or in the form of somebody like a friend who has gone through with it already. Or if the inner child is particularly strong, then you need a therapist. And then Yoga also helps, because yoga is all about bringing things that that are never supposed to connect with one another. Bringing parts of the body that are not supposed to be together at all. We are bringing them together in yoga, and similarly, this inner child is calmed down, because yoga helps with self-love. And what did the inner child not get in its upbringing? What did it think it did not get? It thought it did not get enough love, enough caring. That's why the distrust, that's why the defensiveness, that's why the anger, that's why the sorrow. But this ball of emotions, which is the inner child, first has to be acknowledged of its existence, and then it has to be acknowledged, I need help in overcoming this difficulty. I need help. So teacher can help, yoga can help, other self-help books and inner child workbooks, so many things are there in the market. All of them can help. And so therefore, I have to seek this help. And then this help alone is going to quicken the path of healing it. There is also a lot of self-help measures one can do. One can start journaling and writing it out. The first thing to do is to acknowledge the inner child directly. I know you exist. I know you are frustrated with me. I know you are really upset with me because nobody took care of you, and I have also shut you in a cupboard, and I have not wanted to look at you at all because I have been scared of you. You can directly talk to the inner child. But while doing that, one has to be careful to be in the body of the adult, to inhabit the adult person. One has to be sure. And one has to not identify with the inner child. Identify with the inner child means start feeling bad, start feeling angry. You are not angry. Who is angry? The inner child is angry. Are you able to hold this inner child which is really angry, and are you able to console it, and are you able to be okay with it? That is the idea. You have to reparent the inner child. If you are not able to reparent the inner child, it will not grow up. Because the tendency is to not want to look at this inner child because it's a ball of pain. Who wants to look at a ball of pain? Nobody. Who wants to look at a ball of anger? Nobody. So what does one do? One locks it in a cupboard, in a small closet, and wants to lead the life forgetting about it. The more we forget about it, the more it's going to hijack all the things, all the chances, opportunities, and things that we want in life. So there is no sense in scolding it because it's a child. It doesn't listen to logic. It doesn't have that. It's a small child, 2-year-old or whatever it is. It's not at the age where it can be disciplined. It can only be talked to lovingly. And so therefore, I have to not identify with this child, and I have to look at it lovingly and reparent it. What is the tendency? The tendency is to want to give my inner child to somebody else to babysit. This is the reason why people get married sometimes. They think that somebody else will take care of the inner child, so then I can be free. Let them babysit the inner child. Is this a good plan? No. Why? Because the significant other will also have their inner child, or maybe more than one inner child, that you have to sit and babysit. Are you ready to babysit their inner child? If you say no, 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 then it's much better to babysit your own inner child rather than somebody else's. In the beginning, the other person, the beloved's inner child, is going to look very cute, very sweet. But after a while, it's going to start getting annoying. when the honeymoon period goes away, then everything about the other person is going to start getting to be very annoying, and so too this one also is going to start getting very annoying, the other person's inner child. And you can't give it to somebody else because they don't know how to take care of it. You alone know how to take care of it. You have an intimate relationship with this inner child, and you alone know how to take care of it. And therefore, you have to make the effort to be with it. Everything helps. Small photograph of you when you were small, you can look at it, love it up, and you can comfort it, console it. That is one way to do this every day. And if you had a favorite toy or something and you still have it around when you were a child, there is a lot of opportunities to grow using that toy to help that inner child. And then if there are certain familiar scent or flower or memories, that also physical memories, physicalized memories, it also helps to have that around while one is doing this work. But more than the methods that we use, what is most important is to consistently have a particular time with which I spend with this inner child, or if there is more than one inner children. I have to have a certain amount of time every day that I spend with this child. And then only it will stop hijacking all the things that I want. This is very, very, very important. And in the beginning, this child will not trust. It will not trust you at all because it has been dropped literally and figuratively by everybody. That's what it thinks. It has been abandoned. It has been neglected. It may even have been abused mentally, physically, emotionally, however way, in all the ways. And then so it will not trust anybody. So you have to earn the trust, so that if it is wanting to come out in the form of anger or tears when you are at an important meeting, what will you tell? Not now, I will talk to you later. But then if you don't talk to it later, it will not come to the table to negotiate with you. You have to earn the trust of this little being, number one, and then you have to hold it. You have to watch it cry. You have to watch it get angry. You have to give safe outlets for this anger, safe outlets for the tears, where you don't harm yourself or you don't harm anybody else. And journaling is a very good way. You can write with your dominant hand, and with the non-dominant hand, let that be the voice of the child. Let that be the voice of the child, the non-dominant hand, and then you see what it has to say, and you will be surprised. We are all very surprised as to the intelligence of this child. And this child is very ready to actually grow up, but it doesn't know how. And then at the same time as this child is ready to grow up, paradoxically, it doesn't want to grow up also. There is a part of it that may not want to grow up. Why? Because only when I have tantrums, I am noticed and I am loved. Otherwise, nobody notices me. And you also notice me, it will tell the adult. You also notice me when you see me having a tantrum. And so therefore, I don't want to disappear. I don't want to integrate into you either. What do I want? I want to continue being as I am, so that I'll get what I want at least. I'll get some attention around here. So therefore, I will keep on troubling you. I will keep on doing this. That's another reason why we have to enter into this negotiation with the child, coax it, cajole it, make it feel safe. And then as you see, as you make it feel safe, you get like a mine of information. You get a mine of information about your own childhood. You have to thank the inner child because it has taken you to the roots of anger, to the roots of sorrow, to the roots of distrust, and all these emotions that one wants to overcome. And as these emotions come out, then it's easy to see how to overcome them. There is therapy, there is yoga, there is a combination. Usually a combination is what works. And one can take to an immersive spiritual life for some time, to heal, to go on a retreat, to be away from everybody and everything that is familiar, so that one can really heal. It's more like an emotional rehab. All these things, when they are deployed together, what happens is that the inner child, it doesn't disappear. It becomes less and less and less needy. It becomes less and less and less demanding. It is just happy to be with you, that's all. It integrates into the adult. It need not disappear because it is you. You need not disappear. It is just integrates into you. And when that happens, my friends, it is a very auspicious process in one's life, because suddenly one finds that the one is free of this eclipse of wants, needs, and all kinds of nonsensical desires that are holding one as a hostage from really pursuing what one wants. And so one sees that there is a freedom. One sees that there is much more space, inner space. There is more creativity. There is more tolerance. There is more forbearance. There is more tranquility in the mind, and one is free to pursue whatever one wants to pursue, because the subjective overlay is gone. And when that is gone, then only I can think of becoming, finishing this transformation from being a consumer to a contributor. The consumer is the inner child, because it doesn't, poor thing is clueless. It thinks of it as helpless and needing something all the time. But then the adult is the one who is dying to give to the society, to the community, to give back. And then the nature has made it such that every person has something or the other to give. There is no person without a potential contribution. That is why we don't all look alike. We don't all behave alike. That's why we are born in different countries. We have different nationalities. We have different personalities. We have different backgrounds, because the background also helps in deciding how to contribute and what to contribute, etc. We have different backgrounds. We have different genders. And the color of our skin is different, the color of the hair is different, so many things are different. And these differences are nothing to be scared of. These differences are actually like a garden. If the garden had only one flower, yes, it is beautiful, it's fine. But then imagine if one garden had many, many flowers, it would make the bees very happy. It would make the onlookers also very happy. So this is what humanity is like. It's like a garden of many and varied flowers learning to grow, learning to bloom, learning to blossom, learning to let the fragrance just waft and carry everywhere. Long after the flower is gone, the fragrance still is there. And so this is the growth. This is what one has to do. And if you don't know what is it that I can contribute, start with a smile. This is a no-brainer. Smile. Smile at somebody. Smile at somebody you don't know. Smile at somebody you know, doesn't matter. Start with a smile. Start with small actions. And pray to be guided, to be able to contribute whatever that you are meant to contribute. Sometimes it's a no-brainer because one is good at something, one is good at music. Obviously, one can heal the people through music. If one is good at doing something else, that's what one does. But as long as the overlay of this inner child is there, we don't want to accept our creative calling. We do not want to accept that. We do not want to accept our place in life. We do not want to accept the niche that is there for us. We are constantly in a battle. I know I can do this very well, but I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. This is all the inability to launch from being a child to an adult, from being a permanent child, a perma child, to an adult. A child living in the body of an adult to a true adult. This transformation has to take place. And that transformation, if I stop, if it gets truncated, then I'm not at peace with myself. Even though there are many things I can contribute, I only want to do something that is impossible. And it would be like in a machinery. This is one example that comes in a machinery. There are moving parts like a piston. It goes like this, it goes like this. There are moving parts, and then there is there are the nuts. The nuts have to be tight and sit tight. That is its job in life. That's what it has to contribute by sitting tight. But suddenly, if the nut saw the moving parts and said, I'm not doing anything important, I'm just sitting down. This is terrible. Look at that one is going like this piece of machinery is going this way, the other one is going back and forth, the one more is going up and down, and what's my job in life? To sit tight? No, it can't be. And this nut thought, let me also try to move. First it tried clockwise, nothing happened. Then it tried anti-clockwise, and slowly, I can too move. I can move. And then what happened to the nut? It became looser and looser and looser. It also fell off, and the whole machinery collapsed. That's why it was called a nut, because the sad little nut did not know that in fact its job was so important that it was holding the whole machinery up. It had no clue. And in this way, there is something there that we are meant to do. And the discovery of that, and the actual getting to a comfortable place with that is really something that has to be achieved in life on a relative level before we can achieve the ultimate, which is the wholeness and the freedom. So here one has to be relatively cheerful, relatively whole, relatively free by being in acceptance and by learning to say yes, more yes rather than no. I will stop here. Thank you for listening. And I don't know if this format allows for questions. Do we want to do that, or that's it? I will leave it to Karuna Devi.
Thank you so much to Swamini Swatmavidya Ananda